Hello and welcome to this lecture on Chapter 7. Today we're going to be talking about pay-per-click. This is a follow-up to the search engine optimization. So let's go ahead and get started. So hopefully by the time we finish this chapter you'll understand how pay-per-click works, what makes up a pay-per-click advertisement. You'll be also familiar with the different match types, learn why the match types are important to a pay-per-click, and this is also then part of your campaign, so you'll know the steps needed in a campaign to get this pay-per-click up and running. We'll also discuss again the importance of landing pages and how online comparison engines work, and then we'll understand, hopefully by the time we finish the chapter, the benefits of pay-per-click, while also understanding what the not so good things or negative things about pay-per-click are. So this is how it works. So think of yourself as the advertiser. So the things you would need to do is you need to create the content for the advertisement. Then you'd also have to go out and look at the keywords for which the advertisement should appear. So if somebody types something, a certain keyword that they're looking for, do you want that keyword to be a trigger to have your advertisement come up on the screen? Then, this third bullet, you need to choose the maximum amount that you're willing to pay for a click on that advertisement. And so they would probably bundle that, and then you would pay once it reached that amount. So as you're building this, you need to understand how the search engine algorithm is going to work. So it's going to check and make sure your advertisement's in compliance with their editorial guidelines. And then it displays the advertisement for the different search queries that people type in that they're looking for. So think of it like, if you're on Google or Yahoo or Bing and you type in something, then will that advertisement pop up? And so that algorithm's also going to determine that rank that your page or advertisement would result in. So it gives it a position, right, based on the screen. Maybe you didn't want to pay so much and you want to come up second or third on the screen. Right, so it's based on your maximum bid and the relevance to that keyword. Is it a derivation, a synonym of the keyword? Does it still come up? You have to think about all those keywords as well. You as an advertiser also choose where you would want your advertisements displayed. Maybe you want them both on a search network or a content network. The search network is just like it sounds. It'd be those search engines like Google and Bing and so on. The content network would be like Google AdWords or the people that have joined Google through AdSense and they're willing to display those ads on their websites. And so it'd be alternative websites. So sometimes if you went to WebMD, you would see advertisements. Might also be Facebook, you would see advertisements. Those would be more like the content network. Here's something out of your book. It lists the suppliers and search engines as of 2007. And so the big things that they're leaving out is probably Bing, and they've gotten the other ones like Google and Yahoo. Some may not even be around anymore. But notice that the main types of results are crawlers. These are like bots that go out and search your site, or search the sites that have certain keywords that maybe want that advertising to come up that are related to it. So it might be that somebody's joined the content network and they're advertising, say, kayaks. I keep using that example. And you're selling kayaks or some kind of information that's related, then your ad might come up on their site. The next thing to talk about is what makes up a pay-per-click advertisement. So there should be a heading, there should be 2 lines of advertisement, and then a display URL. If you go to your book and look, they've written some guidelines for Google AdWords. So the amount of content in each one of these areas may be different depending on the search engine that you're using. So according to Google, for a heading, you can only have about 25 characters. If you're 2 lines of advertisement, the first line has 35 characters, the second line has 35 characters. And then your URL has a maximum of 35 characters. Now you can go and get, you can do a tiny URL and shrink that down if it goes past 35 characters. There are some other guidelines that Google has for its AdWords business. You can't have any exclamation marks. There's no word may be written in capitals only. No nonsense words may be used. And you can't claim to be the best, the number one, or any kind of superlatives like that. You can use product numbers. And so make sure you pay attention to those guidelines when you're developing your advertisement. And so here's a brief list of those editorial guidelines from Google AdWords. And a list of more that are written there. So as you're coming up with the keywords that you're using, it also depends on what business you're using. So with Google AdWords, it will match the following types. So there might be a broad type. So let's say you're looking for tennis shoes. So broad might be regular tennis shoes, might be tennis sneaker, history of tennis shoes, some kind of phrase that has shoes or tennis in there, and that would come up. So I put on the screen here a Google search engine, and I typed in the word kayak. And so you can see how the ad came up first here, and then it actually lists more of kayak here and so on. And then we get into our organic results down here. Now if I expand this page, you'll also see, if I'm going to have to move this around, that out to the side, I move this by what you're seeing on the screen, you can actually see that I got this big ad that come up over here. Now if I scroll down the page, there's nothing else listed, so that's pretty specific and what people might be looking for. Now if I type in kayak boats, these are other keywords that people have looked for. Let me show you that. Then we can see that we've got different results that are coming up at the top. Right? So once it's the shop, all of this came up, and so on. Now this is being tracked, and so if I go into Facebook or something else, it might also display those boats or certain types of advertising. So you might be able to also put in certain phrases that would be a match, what is an exact match that you're looking for, and then a negative. A negative is what you don't want to come up. And this is sort of like when you're using your search engine and you're searching for something. Let's say you're searching for bass shoes. Well, if you type in the word bass, you don't want anything that have to do with fish to come up. So that would be the negative things that you don't want to show. The other thing to keep in mind is that if you remember that the things that you had to provide was a URL. Well, what happens if two advertisers are coming up with the same thing and want their ad to display? It's going to be the advertiser who bid the most that's going to get that spot. So in my previous example, it'd probably be, hold on, I still got this here. In the previous example, it would probably be that kayak paid to have that spot for that keyword come up, and that's why it was displayed. So taking what we just talked about in the previous slide, might want to graphically put it this way and think about how do you zero in on what we want to be displayed. So a broad match would get all of this. If I'm looking for a certain key phrase, we might get that. And then I can have my exact phrase of what it is that I want that keyword to match to bring my advertisement up on the screen. So here's some examples. We've got our keywords. This first column represents the broad name. So search term, person types in this. This is a broad term that will match. Yes, yes, yes. It's got shoes. It's got shoes in red. Yes. Okay. Now, the second column here is a phrase. Notice it's in quotes. So that'll match for red shoes, red shoes. I got red and shoes in this phrase. I got smart shoes red, but I don't have it in this order. So that didn't pull up. If somebody types this phrase, it's not going to show that advertising. Then we got exact matches. Red shoes, yes, but nothing matches here. And so that's how you would hone in on what you want to get. You can also make use of geo-targeting. That is, if there's a certain geographic area that you want your advertisements to come from or be available to, then that can happen. Otherwise, your advertisement wouldn't show up. So it may be you might be concerned about shipping, so you don't want it to show up, places that are over 500 miles away, or maybe you've got a product that's only going to work in a good location. You want to make sure people have a positive interaction with that product, so you want to make sure they're in that geographical location. So then it would only show up if they're coming from an IP address in that area. You can also specify a language, so in your search engine. So if they're not using that certain language, then your ad, and it matches the keywords, it wouldn't come up unless they were using that language. Here's an example of the bidding process. So you have some advertisers, they're bidding this amount, but let's say this advertiser A2 bids $3 for a click, and the next one after that, bidding in the same area, is only $2.50. Should they really pay 50 cents more, or do they just have to pay a penny more? So $2.51 is their cost per click. So this $2.50 advertisement, the next lowest is $2.35. So instead of paying the full $2.35, their actual cost is going to be $2.36. So maybe the next person bid $2.05. So then this person can get that area for $2.06, even though they bid higher for it. So this is how that would work, and you would need to understand what the actual cost per click is going to cost you. You need to also be thinking about how much of a budget are you going to advertise or have for that advertising. $2.50 a click, that's pretty steep. Depends on what you're selling. It might be worth it, and you might be over extending it and not being able to use too much of you would not have a budget big enough to have a lot of people look at your ad and then click on that. Okay, on this example, we've got a couple of different strategies based on business principles. So on the first bid A here, they're bidding on a phrase match. The bidder B is bidding on the same keyword with a phrase match, but is bidding for a higher position, so they're paying a little bit more. So this is what they're willing to pay. So then notice that what the total cost is, okay? So they've got this number of impressions, it's how many times the ad was displayed, and so then they have what they paid for it and what their total cost is. So how many people of that 1134 clicked through? That was 5%. Of the 5%, how many were actual conversions? So 5% of the 55 is 5. 11% of 123 is about 11 conversions. So what is that conversion rate? So 5 divided by 55, about 9%. So they both had about the same conversion rate. So what is the cost per acquisition? So if I take this conversions and divide it into our total cost, that's what the value is here. So conversions into this. So you can see, based on how they bid, what is that cost of somebody actually clicking on something, of what they want them to do. And so you can see, depending on what you're bidding, how that can have a significant impact. So if we look at bidder C, they got a whole lot more impressions, right? So they're bidding on the same keyword, but with a broad match this time. All right, so they're trafficking, because the traffic is less targeted, the conversion rate of the website is lower. So this is costing them even more. So depending on what kind of budget you have and what kind of conversion rate you're looking at, that'll determine how much that cost per acquisition is. So it's something else to be thinking about. Another thing you should be thinking about is this long tail result. And so the long tail search is thinking about, things that people would be searching for that don't come up right away, but that would actually give you more hits because they're actually typing in something a little bit different than the generic type of keyword. So this area here would be the small number of high volume searches. And then on this other side, this is a large number of low volume searches. Right? So you can think about, if you come up with these kind of search terms, you could actually match the same kind of volume as you're getting over here. So the next thing we'll talk about is planning and setting up your campaign. So step one, you should probably look at your online and offline analysis of your business, what your customers' demographics are, and what's going on in your industry, and how are your competitors going after that customer. Think about what your goals are for this campaign. Is it getting up the number of clicks, getting a large number of hits, so on. Think about your budget, what your cost per action is going to be, and who you're going to target. Look at those keywords that you're going to use. Are you going to use those first keywords that are kind of generic that everybody's going to use? You're probably going to pay higher to get into that ranking for those, versus if you look at these kind of search terms, you may not have to pay as much, and if you're using them, you might get just as much volume. Right? Then write your advertisement, follow those guidelines, place your bids, see how well you can do, and then come back and then always follow up in terms of measuring how well you did in terms of costs, the follow through with your customers. Did they actually go through and buy something? Test different types of advertising and then optimize that. So the next thing is talking about, if you think about, you're going to give them a URL. That URL becomes the page that the viewer is going to land on. Right? So this landing page is where, when they click on that advertisement, that's where you're taking them to. So depending on what's on that page is going to be crucial to your campaign. This is some of the things that you can do some testing on in terms of different types of advertising, different types of colors, layout, fonts, wording. All that can be tested to see which kind of ad best gets that user to click on that and follow through and come to your site. And so when you're doing your experiments, you can actually create a script that would have users go to a different landing page depending on what search engine they're on. Another thing to consider where your advertisement might pop up is online comparison engines where they're comparing your product to somebody else's. And so here's a list of different comparison engines that are out there. I've heard of NextTag. The others you check and see depending on what country you're in. But that's another place where you might get your advertising to come up. If you're going to do that, then you might need to provide some information to those comparison engines. So the information that you would need to provide is a product name, price, the URL, and so on. Now notice it can come in different formats. XML is extensible markup language. It looks a lot like HTML, except with XML you're going to use tags that are actually probably just like the ones you see here on the screen. You're just going to put a little greater than sign and less than sign at the beginning and end. Or CSV is comma separated values, and that is like a precursor to data that would go into an Excel spreadsheet. So if you lay it like that out, then they can use it and they just pump it right into their system. So here's an example of a camera that's being compared, and you can see how different information comes up. You want your stuff to be compared. People can click on that and come to a different landing site. So when you use the comparison engines, you're going to need to have some way of telling where they came from. And that's easy to do if you're using Google Analytics to do that. So you need to then, if you're looking at your campaign, you want to measure that conversion from the clicks. So did it come up on the comparison site? Did people click on it? Then even follow through. Once they clicked on it, came to your site, did they actually buy anything? And so you want to make sure that the information that you're providing to these comparison engines are up to date. You have good, clear product names. You have a unique URL for each product. So if you're selling cameras and a bunch of your cameras came up on that comparison, you want to make sure they all have different names and that they're going to have different landing pages so you can track where people are coming from and where did they land. Right? And have a good description for each product. And something you just get a good feel for is, bidding on those and make sure that you're setting a right price for when somebody clicks on that, what you're willing to pay. Right? And then you want to try and see what your competitors are doing and see if they're paying a whole lot and they're getting all the clicks. That can have a negative impact on you, and you may have to pay more to get a higher ranking so that your information comes out and is displayed where you want it to be displayed. Some things that you can use to help you in this process is determining your keywords. Some of them you have to pay a fee in order to get into the site, or you pay a monthly fee to access their site. But you can look up certain keywords from those sites and see how they're being used on the internet. So one area is to use Overture. I've also seen Keyword Tracker. You can use that. If we look here, I type in Overture keywords. You'll notice here we have that, what your book's talking about. If we go there, you can see, kind of walks you through what you're looking for, get some suggestions and so on. So just, if you're looking for certain keywords, you're doing a site, you might want to type that in and just see what you get. Now, when I typed in the keywords data analytics, I got an error, so this may not be where you want to go. Let me see if I can find another place for you. I'm actually typing in Keyword Tracker, and you can type that in. Looks like it. We'll see if they'll give us a little free. Sometimes when I use this over and over again, it tracks me. Look at data analytics, see what kind of results it gives you. So it shows you, what are some keywords that people are looking for, what's coming up the most, and so that may help you choose what you want as part of your phrase. And so you can see it's not giving me all the suggestions. So these are the top results, so you're probably going to pay more to get these results. But if you were to scroll down and get at that long tail area, you might find some good things that would give you just as much result in terms of being going after these keywords, but you could ask or bid a smaller amount and your volume would be as much if you got these keywords at the top. So I just wanted to show you how that works. Here's an example of Google's ads preview tool, so you can see, if you're looking at a certain keyword, what comes up, and so on, and change the language and the location of where you're doing. See how that comes up over here. So that's another thing that you can use. Some other places you can go to get keywords, these locations, paid services, these areas, and they change periodically. Some of them go in and out, but you can find, just look do a search on keyword suggestion tools, and then the different ones will come up. So some things to be on the lookout for is something called click fraud. And this is where someone clicks on your advertisement, and that means you're paying for it, but they may not even be a good potential customer, so they're using up all your advertising budget. Because you're looking for those certain high ranking keywords, you may get into a bidding war, and that'll use up all your budget. And so the key thing is you got to monitor everything that's going on. Make sure that people are clicking. Are they coming to your website? Are they actually staying, or are they bouncing right out again? And so monitor. So the positive things of using the pay-per-click is you're tracking every cent. You can target the exact advertisement and placement. And because you're doing the experiment, you're actually giving customers what they want. And then probably the most important one, this no to low cost barrier here, is that you're just paying for the traffic that you want. You're not just putting everything up and paying every time they have to click on it. And so that's a good thing. And so that, I believe, ends this lecture on Chapter 7, dealing with pay-per-click. So I hope you learned something new and how you might use it if you ever develop a commercial website.